Hey there. So, I wanted to talk about a couple of climate related things, all stemming from this one video here that I saw posted from Climate Defiance, which is a pretty cool little group. They've been doing some really interesting kind of direct action protesting uh, stuff. Really, really cool stuff. So, definitely check them out. Um, Anywho, let's check this video out.
A heated exchange between U.S. Senator Joe Manchin and climate activists. Have a look here.
Joe Manchin, you have sold our futures and you've gotten rich doing it. You sick. How dare you?
Well, you can see one protester getting thrown to the ground after confronting Manchin. According to the Harvard Crimson, the near brawl happened when 6 demonstrators from the group Climate Defiance interrupted a talk Manchin was giving at Harvard's Kennedy School on Friday. They were criticizing Manchin's support of the Mountain Valley Pipeline. The 300-mile natural gas pipeline in West Virginia has drawn the ire of environmentalists.
I'm glad it didn't get worse than it did. Obviously, a U.S. senator should be able to go to a campus and talk, and whatever the disagreement is should be handled differently than that. I will say that there is a growing level of alarm on the ecological left about what's happening. Right now the weather is just totally nuts. You've got Texas burning, California is freezing. There's a lot that's going on. There is a sense of frustration. So I understand the young people's concern and their frustration, but that is not the right way to do it.
Well, there was a
And the video ends there, talking about that's not the right way to do it, which I think is just so silly and condescending because, what is the right way considering we've been sitting on our hands for decades? um, and yeah, the thing that really got me about this though is that he writes off the only people being concerned as ecological left, as if that is an institutional force at all or anything, right? So I wanted to take a quick moment to look exactly and examine who exactly are the people that are concerned with the Mountain Valley Pipeline. Are they only ecological left, right? Um, so yeah, we'll check that out right here. you know, here's a cool um group talking about folks that are organizing against it. River and Andy are here locked to a vehicle, right? These are like local older folks. It's not like it's some movement that it's ecological left, right? It's like these are people. Everybody is on board with not uh wanting that going on, that are in that area. Just to clarify, here's the map of like what will be what the MVP will be affecting, right? That's a pretty significant deal there. So, yeah, we've got natives, moms, it's just so strange to me that this, you know, CNN, this huge news organization wants to write off the concerns of like regular people uh as being like, ecological left, like it's some fringe thing to want a livable environment or not have their communities be subject to the various problems that construction like that uh, and pipelines themselves can bring to communities. Here they are at the White House. Yeah. More folks locking themselves to the vehicle. They got the Here's a good one. Mansion, stop burning our future. Maybe we wouldn't have to interrupt meetings like that if he had listened 100 weeks ago. Like what are we supposed to do at this point besides interrupt him or, um, you know, perhaps even more extreme action, right? Like if this is not enough, if literally people having to go sacrifice their time and their freedom even because these people are getting arrested, right? Uh Here's another good point. They're trying to write it off as the ecological left. Like listen to the original people that lived here and stewarded the land, right? Like it's stolen land. Why do we have the right to declare what we can do on it in the first place? Right? Yeah. Yeah, here they are having to go to trial. But yeah, I just feel like it's very important that we look at who the ecological left supposedly are, because that's just a term that doesn't sit right with me. Trying to write them all off as like some sort of like fringe ideologists. Here we go. Hell yeah. He blocked the truck. Charged with felony kidnapping, felony larceny, misdemeanor riot, unlawful assembly. Awesome. Yeah, there it is. Many will ask, why have I chained myself to a truck carrying pipe for the MVP? I had no choice. I know what looms before us if we continue down the path with our obsessive use of fossil fuels. As a scientist and engineer who has been active in the field of water resources and hydrometeorology in the US and internationally, working on issues related to climate change and global warming, I believe the science. The science is unequivocal. The consequences stemming from our use of fossil fuels and atmospheric loading of greenhouse gases from anthropogenic emissions are dire. It is not a hyperbole to say that we are in the midst of collapse of global ecosystems. Scientific studies show that this is happening now. This necessarily implies the death of many hundreds of millions, if not billions, which yeah, I've encountered, you know, material that implicates billions of lives, um, of humans as a direct result of global atmospheric warming. The IPCC stated in its global warming of 1.5 degrees Celsius report that not only do we need to begin reducing our use of fossil fuels now, we must start actively sequestering atmospheric CO2. So again, cut and dry, instead of continuing use, we need to be investing in sequestering. Instead, our government is subsidizing continuing the use and not doing enough to sequester. In fact, what they're concerned with apparently is banning TikTok and sending money to war, right? Which again, war is not great for emissions. The metaphor used by the quote continues, the metaphor used by Greta Thunberg is that our house is on fire. She is correct. Do we stand by and let our house burn down? When is the time to act and save our house, I mean. Pardon. And then it keeps going. I have committed no crime. I would have committed a crime against humanity had I sat as an idle bystander, letting the greed of political and corporate forces advance. Politicians in the Commonwealth of Virginia are in the pockets of corporate America, which, yeah, if you study Mansion, Dude's a piece of work. It's called the Virginia Way. Environmental regulations that were enacted to protect our natural waters and conserve soil resources have been ignored and have been wantonly brushed aside to serve the interest of corporate greed. MVP and their supporters lie about the local benefits accrued from the flow of natural gas. Increased production serves only investors because the natural gas is intended for the expansion of service marginally locally, but largely they are seeking the expansion of natural gas sales to oversee markets. They are not meeting demand. MVP and others only seek greater profit and do not care about the consequences that will befall our children and grandchildren in the years to come. MVP and pipeline supporters deny what climate science is telling us. We must be we must be reducing our use of fossil fuels instead of increasing our use of them to avoid the worst of the consequences of global warming now. Promoters of these pipelines are seeking expansion of our use of natural gas and other fossil fuels at a time when we must be reducing our use of them. What is more, there is the destruction of local forests and aquatic habitats that endanger unique indigenous species and threaten drinking water supplies and fishing habitats. MVP has consistently and unapologetically violated Commonwealth clean water regulations, suffering minor and ineffective fines. It's their calculated cost of doing business. We have, in the past year in the US, experienced near record heat, which, yeah, this is 149 weeks ago. Consider the last year, right? 2023. I think we're on day 375 of consecutive records being broken in regards to heat. Anywho, yeah, we've experienced near record heat, record wildfires in the West, the greatest number of recorded tropical storms ever, which, adding a personal touch, 50 of my neighbors at least died in Hurricane Otis in Guerrero. You know, it's not gonna get better as the oceans continue to warm. And a devastating Arctic freeze in the central part of the US, extending deep into Texas, resulting from a polar vortex that is the direct consequence of global warming. This occurred due to excessive polar warming that produces dramatic swings in the atmospheric jet stream. Global warming must be stopped for the health of our home, planet Earth, and to preserve the lives of our descendants. We can only do this by acting now to stop our use of fossil fuels. We have no choice, right? So again, it's like the ecological left is like, this guy is a professional in the field. This guy should be our leader, and he's over here having to go to jail and be charged with felonies because there's no other recourse, right? We've tried taking this to court. In fact, we'll go into that in just a moment. Actually, why not now? Right here.
Youth have been stepping up to do what should have been done by adults decades ago.
In 2015, 21 young Americans filed their constitutional climate lawsuit, Juliana, against the United States government.
Embedded into the Constitution of the United States are the protection of life and liberty.
There's no life without a livable climate.
We have a right to a healthy planet, and it is up to us to ensure that this right is being upheld by our government.
The Juliana 21 are fighting for America's clean air and water.
Youth are fighting for our clean energy future.
And now that they've almost succeeded, they're facing unjust obstacles that are placed deliberately in their way.
For over 8 years, the U.S. Department of Justice has aggressively filed motions to delay or dismiss this landmark constitutional climate case.
Out of 40,000 cases in front of the DOJ, only one has been singled out, Juliana.
See, we're in a crucial window right now, as Biden and the Department of Justice have a matter of weeks
to pull back their attack and allow Juliana 21 to have their day in court.
Attorney General Merrick Garland and Solicitor General Prelogar, the Juliana youth are fighting for all of us.
It is imperative that President Biden demand the DOJ
to go to trial and give the youth their day in court.
Give them
their day in court.
Give them
their day in court.
Yeah. So we'll let's just try to find a timeline here real quick, just to get a visual. Let's try. That's too much. I want a nice little. Yeah, here we go. 2015. We're starting. They're filing the case. They're, you know. Yeah, seeing a lot of government motion denied, huh? Right? So there's just been a lot of back and forth since 2015, right? And again, the people rally, right? The people, not the ecological left. On the day the trial should have begun, thousands of people around the country rallied at courthouses to stand in solidarity with the plaintiffs. And it was denied again. Right? So they go, they keep doing it back and back and back and forth. And then, of course, you know, then we get Biden, so we figure we might finally be done with all the back and forth. And then I think they struck it down again. Yeah. Ending without a resolution after 5 months. And we're still, yep, another motion to dismiss. Like, I'm laughing because of just how absurd it is. But I mean, like, again, people have already died. We're going to get into that. And then they're literally playing games with us while scientists are having to go to jail. I don't think it can be understated exactly like the gravity of the situation we're in when we're looking at stuff like this, right? Yeah, and things have been picking up recently. That's why they're doing all that. So, yep, that's where we are. Years, nearly 10 years have gone by of back and forth, you know, and we got to consider what's happened, you know, recently too. Also, you know, talking about this, you know, and the writing off, it kind of reminded me of this video of Dianne Feinstein from a while ago. I just wanted to share that too, just to show, you know, what exactly our leadership's prognosis on the matter is. This is from 2019, but we can't imagine that you know, their positions have changed too much considering all the class incentives are the same. And in fact, the ownership class has just had more and more time to continue consolidating wealth um, to use against all of us. So yeah, let's check this video out because again, it's one that lives in my mind um, frequently.
Gonna go in and share this letter, and we're gonna do it all together. Yeah. Share it in front of Feinstein. Okay. We're asking her to vote yes on the Green New Deal.
We are trying to ask you to vote yes on the Green New Deal.
Please.
Okay, I'll tell you what. We have our own Green New Deal.
Some scientists have said that we have 12 years to turn this around.
Well, it's not going to get turned around in 10 years.
Right there. It's not going to get turned around in 10 years. Okay, then. So if our legislation cannot do it, what are we going to do then? Do we throw our hands up and just let it happen? Right? It's like they're telling us. They told us blatantly they have no interest in doing it. They are going to sacrifice people's lives, including my neighbors' lives. It could have been me, right? Or, you know, tons and tons, you know, up to, you know, like I said, there were billions of lives implicated, and those billions are the people who are least responsible for these decisions in the first place, right? There are going to be people who don't have the infrastructure to withstand um, the effects of climate change, either the danger that comes from, you know, disaster or issues with regard to like food and stuff, which we'll also get into in a bit.
years, what we can do.
Senator, if
is
this
put
doesn't get turned
ourselves-
around in 10 years, you're looking at the faces of the people who are going to be living with these consequences.
The government is supposed to be for the people and by the people and all
You know
for the
what's
people.
interesting about this group is I've been doing this for 30 years. I know what I'm doing. You come in here and you say it has to be my way or the highway. I don't respond to that. I've gotten elected. I just ran. I was elected by almost 1 million vote plurality. And I know what I'm doing. So, you know, maybe people should listen a little bit.
I hear what you're saying, but we're the people who voted you. You're supposed to listen to us. That's your
How old are you?
job.
How old
I'm
are you?
16. I
Well,
can't
you didn't vote for me.
Well,
I'm 24.
It doesn't matter. We're the ones who are going to be impacted.
Mean something.
It doesn't matter. We're going to be the ones who are impacted.
I understand that. I have 7 grandchildren.
All right.
I understand.
But my grandchildren are rich and they're going to be insulated against the consequences of my inaction, is effectively what she's telling them.
Very well.
Senator, the cost of not taking this action is far higher than the cost of what the Green New Deal will be. And there
Here's
is
what-
enormous popularity for this bill around
Okay.
the whole country.
Here's
And we're
what
asking you to
we
be
are
brave
proposing.
and do this for us and for your grandchildren.
Get enough for everyone. I'm trying to do the best I can, which was to write a responsible resolution.
Any plan that doesn't
has-
take bold,
Okay.
transformative action is not going to be what we need.
Well, you know better than I do.
Why don't
So
you
I think one day you should run for the Senate.
Great.
And then you do it your way.
But by
have
that
a letter
time,
for
in the
you.
meantime,
by that time, there's
I
going to be a
just,
big problem.
I
We
just
have a
won a
letter
big
for you.
election.
Yeah. So I'm sure that speaks for itself of why it's on my mind nowadays. Again, from years ago, right? We got to think about what exactly we've been doing in that time frame, right? Here we've got just another just simple thing talking about that I just wanted to mention because it it kind of correlates on like how our economic system is needlessly making climate change worse by making people's lives worse because we're wasting food, right? 1/3 of all the food produced in the world goes to waste, right? Thrown away in hotels, grocery stores, restaurants, schools, or kitchens. It's not just social or humanitarian, it's environmental. When we waste food, we waste all the energy and water it takes to grow, harvest, transport, and package it. If it goes to landfills and rots, it produces methane, which is a greenhouse gas. About 6 to 8% of all human-caused greenhouse gas emissions could be reduced if we stopped wasting food. In the US alone, the production or loss of wasted food generates the equivalent of 32.6 million cars worth of greenhouse gas emissions. So again, we could have policy that fixes this, and instead, all of our energy, it seems, is going to war, or during Trump, it was going to rolling back environmental protection, or maintaining a status quo that makes where again it rewarding people and providing a material incentive for wasting food. It makes no sense. It literally is baffling. But that's what our ruling class is deciding to do. So again, we have to act accordingly when that's what they are telling us they want to continue, or that's the policy they want to uphold. Because when they don't act on that, they're telling us they're fine with that happening, right? We have to judge the system by the results it's producing, not any ideology or whatever platitudes they want to share with us. We have to look at their actual actions, right? Let's keep on trucking through these things. I believe I saved this just a little context about maybe why we're having this problem, maybe why we can't get policy, and what's going on. Because when you think about our country, the words oligarchy plutocracy, come to mind. It's a dictatorship of capital that was always built by and for those with consolidated wealth, right? It's basically been a several hundred years experiment in what happens when you give all executive decision making capacity in a society to those with consolidated wealth, right? No more kings and nobles. It's only owners now. It's only those with consolidated wealth. Let's see what happens. And this this is the end result. We have to, like I was saying, judge the system by the results it's producing. Here we have the global average of emissions, right? Pretty low, pretty modest. The poorest are actually incredibly small. Poorest 50% globally. So again, that's not like exact, I was saying in our Western, in this country, that was the experiment. But again, you scale that to the globe, right? The it's not like just the US, it's the entire West as an institution, right? Consolidated wealth has been the MO since the French Revolution, since the enclosures, right? Since industrialization, really. So that's kind of my point. I was over there rambling about the US specifically because that's where I live, but it is a global phenomenon, right? With regard to kind of what neoliberalism started and has perpetuated globally, right? Anyway, so yeah, we study that even the richest 10% are multiple times what the other 50 are, right? But then, that's still modest compared to just the single 1%. Their single 1% has been absurdly high. And again, you still look 2030, right? Less than 10 years. And that's still projected to be that high. Like, I don't know. I don't know how we can look at this and not have the same conclusions as this gentleman, right? Like, what is a felony in the face of stuff like that? Anyway, let's continue. Talking about, then we're going back to who are the ecological left? 2/3 of Americans think the government should do more on climate. So again, just grinds my gears that this gentleman presents this as like a fringe ecological left thing when it's 2/3 of Americans. And that's in 2020. Again, imagine now after our 375 days of consecutive record breaking, right? It's not, we cannot ignore it. It's in our face. 375 days, right? It's not just a fluke. So I'd love to see updated statistics. But yeah, here's the thing that I came across that could just kind of, I don't know. I just feel like it's significant in light of what was shared here. Yeah. Americans see too little federal action on climate change, but we can give Israel billions at the drop of a hat and then continue perpetuating war and suffering. For what reason explicitly exactly? Right? Oh, it's more money, more global trade, the exact things that are causing the climate crisis. That's what really gets me. And I know I was saying this on the last video, but yeah, it's like they're choosing to invest in things that are causing massive suffering for the express purpose of causing a climate crisis that will then cause more suffering. And it's like again, like the assessment that our current status quo is a death cult and always has been is not a hyperbole. It really, when you really look at it, and that's why I brought up necropolitics on the last one. It's a really significant uh, just part of the analysis, I suppose. It's significant context when it comes to examining why the West behaves the way it does, right? And why we have to have war still, right? After all the advances in automation, after all the advances in technology, why exactly, when food comes out of the ground, when rain comes out of the sky, are we having to have war in this current day and age, right? And, again, you dig at the root of that question, you'll find, there's a lot of federal action. So they can do things, right? But it's just not the things that we need. It's the things our ruling class wants. And that is the root of the problem, right? Let's keep looking. Despite this, right? Yeah, let's read it again, fresh in our minds. 2/3 of Americans think we should do more. Our government should do more on climate. Here we go. This is from November 23, right? A whopping 3 years later. Governments plan to produce double the fossil fuels in 2030 than the 1.c warming limit allows. What the fuck, right? That is, and again, right there, 69% more than would be consistent with 2 degrees C. 2 degrees C is genocidal intent, full stop. 2 degrees C needs to be called what it is, right? In fact, in 1980, we knew what we knew what 2 degrees C was. Here we go. 1980, American Petroleum Institute, CO2 and Climate Task Force, the CO2 problem, addressing research agenda development. There's a lot of stuff in here, but what we want to look at, I believe, is over on page 12, right here. Carbon cycle conclusions. Or maybe it's 13. Where is it? Yes, it's 13. Climate modeling conclusions. Global average 2.5 C rise expected by 2038. Large era. Yeah, again, there's a window of that. Likely impacts. There we go. Let's read this. 1 degree C rise will be barely noticeable. 2.5 degrees rise, major economic consequences, strong regional dependence. Which is a nice way to say some places will be completely fucked sideways, and we are okay with sacrificing them for profit. 5 degrees C, which again, we have to remind ourselves that change in the climate is not linear. So 5 degrees C, which is projected by 2067, globally catastrophic effects. Right? 1980, they knew this. March 18th, 1980, right there. So, again, a conscious choice to sacrifice people for profit. So, again, just thinking about it, like wrapping our brain around exactly what they are choosing to do in spite of the consequences they know are woven into these decisions. Again, it's like, how could we come to any other conclusion? Also going back to the pipeline and all that stuff, here's an article that just came out, I think. Yeah, March 13th, 2024. That was just 2 days ago. U.S. energy industry methane emissions are triple what government thinks, study finds, right? So again, our government is being so blatantly arrogant in our faces, yet still we're finding out that in fact it's worse than that. Right? causing 9.3 billion in yearly climate damage. Right? How much would it cost to solve climate change, right? Why can't we put 9.3 why couldn't, 10 years ago, why couldn't we put 9.3 billion into solving it? Cuz it's not like we didn't have the resources, right? Just a reminder, I know I've talked about this one also too, but top 1% has taken $50 trillion from the bottom 90% since, I believe, where is it? I believe it was 1970. Yeah, 1975 to 2018. So there is 50 trillion somewhere generated. We have the resources and capacity to apply those resources, especially if we can send Israel armaments to the degree we are at the drop of a hat, right? Again, it's all a problem of executive decision making control and who has access to it. Right now, it is only a class, it's exclusively relegated to rich people. So we're having these problems, right? Anyway. Yeah, no apparent plans to transition away from it later. Science says we must start reducing global coal, oil, and gas production and use now, along with scaling up clean energy to keep the reducing methane emissions from all sources, which again, some of them are natural. So we really have to, again, we should really be mitigating. We should not be investing in anything but to keep the 1.5 degrees C goal alive. Despite being the root cause of the climate crisis, fossil fuels have remained largely absent from international climate negotiations until recent years. Despite, um, despite no, oh, I guess I closed the tab. the API report, 1980. Even before 1980, they had ideas of how carbon was going to be influencing the climate as we move forward. But yeah. Whew. Let's keep going. So yeah, just a refresher. This is the global sea surface temperature. We're talking about our 375 days of record stuff. It was just a little funny thing I wanted to share. Just a little humor to lighten the mood. They were saying buy the dip because, it is dipping, but it's still absurdly high compared to, what is normal. Again, we are in a new climate. It has changed. It's not like it's just, oh, it might change if we don't stop the stuff. No, it already has. We are in a new age and we need to be acting like it and investing accordingly, right? Anyways, I think there was more I wanted to say about that. Oh, yes. The reason that the sea surface temperature is so important is because when there are storms over the water, higher temperatures mean more validity, right? The capacity for them to turn into worse storms faster is part of that. Which, yeah, needless to say, it's bad. It killed my neighbors, destroyed all of my things. My wife did not even have clothes, right? Like, it was bad, right? Literally a devastating disaster. They didn't have power for months. They couldn't get supplies for months. Again, luckily, that area is relatively good in regards to infrastructure, so people could still get what they need, though I cannot imagine that there weren't people that were falling through the cracks still. But we have to consider, what about folks in areas that don't have as good infrastructure to withstand such things? Or when there's combinations of failures. For example, what if there's a hurricane in one place and they were going to get aid from a nearby place, an hour or so away, and that place is also implicated. What then? Or in a broader sense, we'll talk about it a little bit more, talking about potato farming. What if there's failures in one region that, you know, for a long time, when we have those failures, we supplement them with a better harvest in another area. What happens if all the harvests are failing, right? We need to consider the new World 3 model. I actually should have grabbed that. I'd 3 model. I think that's what it's called. Yeah. It's a simulation of interactions between population, industrial growth, food production, and limits. I think I did talk about this one on the last one. Uh, World 3 was like the original one, I think, but there's like a recently updated one, but I could not remember what it is. I'd have to go dig for it and find it. Like I've got these tabs up here. I should have grabbed it. Oh, I think this might be it. I just want to find the PDF where it's pretty. Ah. Is this just going to be the same article? Yeah. Well, anyway. Oh, there we go. It does have the graphics from the thing. Yeah. So if we go looking at food production, 2025, we'll notice a very interesting trend that begins a little bit before that, and it goes, it literally nosedives, right? Business as usual. It'll nosedive just a little faster, right? It's like it's not it's not looking good, right? Industrial output also tanks at the same time. I wonder what that could imply, right? Anyway, where were we? But yeah, my point was food systems are going to get stressed, especially in places without infrastructure, who are once again the most innocent people in this equation. They were not involved with the decisions that led to this. So why are their lives considered forfeit in light of that, right? Anyway, so here's another just to prove the point. The North Atlantic sea surface temperature more than 4 standard deviations above the mean for the last 3 decades. That appears significant, right? That isn't exactly a linear curve, right? Um, part of that also is due to the Earth's albedo effect, right? As the climate changes due to global warming, you can guess that the sea ice and glaciers that melt will lower the overall albedo effect of the Earth. With a warmer climate, some precipitation that would have fallen as snow will now fall as rain. Less snow means less snow cover, further lowering Earth's albedo, right? Albedo is a very significant part of our climate, yet I don't think I have ever heard it talked about on the news or with regard to policy, right? Again, the Feinstein video comes back to my thing. Oh, we know what we're doing. I was elected, but they don't talk about it. So here's a tweet from a page. I'm not really sure. Collapse 2050 is a kind of a weird angle, but they are sharing a chart from an actual scientist. They're talking about how our planet is absorbing more solar radiation. That's, part of the albedo effect also, as far as I understand it. This stuff is kind of confusing to me. I'm not a scientist. But again, we have a nonlinear curve. We should be holding these people criminally accountable. Like, this is it's cut and dry, right? Here's the gentleman that chart is from. He's a scientist in the Netherlands. Really cool page, so check out his stuff. Yeah, right here. The trend of increasing heat extremes across Europe is larger than the trend simulated by climate models. So again, it's worse than we have been able to um to model, right? Here's another significant thing he just posted recently. Yeah. In 4 months' time, 1.5 degrees C got another 13 months closer. A little bit faster than we thought, huh? Yeah. So anyway, yeah, he says right there, it's pretty succinct. Hope is not an effective risk mitigation strategy. We can't hope that people like this or people like Joe Manchin are going to do the right thing. They've told us we won't. It's like we're in an abusive partnership, right? It's like they've shown us who they are over and over and over again, and we're still relying on the establishment for some reason to solve this. Like, yes, solving it is going to be, we're going to need legal apparatuses, right? We're going to need a state to hold these people accountable. So again, the anarcho whatever, ain't right now. We could, it might be a good idea. It might be a good goal, right? I sympathize a lot and I respect a lot anarchist thinkers, but when we're coming to this stuff, you know, we're going to need legal enforcement to address this if we're going to address it. But that said, this administration, this establishment is not going to address it. We need to fundamentally change who is at the reins of executive decision making capability, right? Which, yes, I am calling for some degree of change in regards to what class is comprising um, the one with leadership capacity or executive decision making capability. How do we get there? There are many philosophies. I find what the black socialists in America advocate for in regards to building dual power and utilizing working class tactics like the general strike that we've used in the past. We haven't explicitly used the general strike, but with regard to organizing our labor, to the point that we can do that, that's what we were doing to get the New Deal. That's what, places over in Europe that are faring a little better in regard to their labor or in regard to climate action, they are, uh, you know, um, what's the word? Sorry, I lost my train of thought because I thought of something else I want to discuss. I was gonna make another video on it just on its own, but it goes hand in hand with this. I'll just accept losing my train of thought there to be sacrificed for this point. So this was very recently. Um, oh, this wasn't climate related. I am a silly goose. Well, never mind then. We'll talk about this though. Yes, we will. In fact, let me write that down. I'm just gonna make a quick little note so I don't forget because I've been meaning to make that for a couple of days. Do Balfour. Okay. um Yeah. So where were we? Talking about albedo, I believe. Yeah. And then, yeah, here these next couple are to do with farming and the food production and whatnot. So yeah, we're gonna have such a significant change. You know, this is from 2013, but they were already saying that it's going to be so significant that they're going to actually have to change what they're farming. So just to prove that it's not like a hoax or some agenda thing, because I see a lot of misinformation out there these days. That's another big problem. We had we have people with consolidated wealth. Again, just an egregious waste. They're using their wealth to spread misinformation or denialism or etc. That oh, the climate's always been changing, or oh, it's a hoax. The government is doing it on purpose to be able to control us more because they need more state power. Which again, like, yeah, that's a fair concern in these current days that our government, as it stands today, gets more power, right? Yeah, that's a problem. But that doesn't mean explicitly that climate change is a hoax or that there's nothing we can do about it. The answer then is to change the government, right? Our answer is pretty clear. If the government's the problem, then let's address that. It's not that the government will always be a problem, as libertarians, rightist libertarians will have you believe. Again, that's consolidated money talking. That's think tanks talking. That's the Heritage Foundation. That's the Foundation for Economic Education, right? These are think tanks. They are there to shape public thought. They are there for billionaires to purvey their ideas through people who are not, in any other sense, aligned with them in regard to class or status or their life trajectory or anything, right? It's crazy that they have that capacity in our society, right? That we have a society that affords them that capability. It seems insane, right? But here we are. Anyway, so yeah, in the future, due to climate change, instead of potatoes and rye, we will rather grow corn and I don't even know how to pronounce that. Sorry, I'm a dumb Westerner. We have to learn water management anew. Right? Doesn't that sound like a headache? Why? It makes no sense. We will have to, right? Why? Our governments are choosing this. We don't have to do it. We could listen to science. We could listen to indigenous people, right? They've been saying the same things science has. They've had this insight. Literally, I watched a video the other day where they were just talking about this stuff. It was from, I believe, 10 years ago or perhaps more. And they were talking about how, they don't have this climate modeling and data, but they were talking about how our disruption on the climate will affect the winds, right? They said it'll make the winds stronger, which again, when you factor in the surface sea temperature, yeah, that's exactly what's going on. We're having stronger storms because of the warming, right? They have insight. They know how to steward the environment, right? Because they don't, I don't mean to speak for all of them, because there's 500 different indigenous nations as far as I'm considered, or types of communities. Um, but again, they're stewarding it in a far greater capacity than anything that the Western status quo or the current global hegemonic order can afford, right? The status quo and the world order are almost like hell bent on maintaining itself over anything else, which is fascism, by the way. That is a fascistic position, and that is exactly why we are experiencing, so many other problems. Is these systems are threatened, right? They're threatened by climate change. They're threatened by themselves internally, right? Because it's a volatile system. It's boom and bust cycles. They're woven into it. So it threatens itself. It has its own problems inside. It's threatened by External factors like disease, COVID-19, huge problem for our ownership class. And again, we saw them, we observed them make the working people shoulder the burden while the rich got bailouts and were largely insulated from the consequences, while our communities were sacrificed and are still sacrificed to this day, right? I believe I saw one contraction of even mild COVID can age your brain by like 7 years, right? That's class warfare, plain and simple. They hung us out to dry, and and again, we can't expect anything different when it comes to the climate, and that is really, I think, what should motivate us into action because they showed us, again, it's like an abusive partner. They showed us who they are. We don't need to listen to the decorum and the mythology that they put in front of us. We need to look at reality and what is happening in front of our eyes and who these people are at the core of their being and who they're beholden to, which is money over anything else. Ownership, protection of the current status quo that they inherited, as a class of, people at the reins of the society instead of a regular working person, right? They're essentially living in a different universe, and that is what gives them the cognitive ability to sacrifice lives in the way they do, right? With regard to climate, war, uh, health, disease, it's all related issue. So I just wanted to soapbox about that for a bit. Funny that a conversation about potatoes would get us there. But yeah, just wanted to mention this one too. Whatever. There was a particular thing in here, I think. Darn. I had it highlighted before, but yeah. Here, talking about the climate stuff. So this is from last January. Climate change effects are already visible, with more and more frequent heat waves, record-breaking temperatures, and droughts, as experienced in Europe during the past summer, for example. We'll touch on that. These phenomena threaten European farming activities and potato farming in particular. Potatoes are sensitive to sudden temperature changes and are strongly affected by both a lack and excess of water. They are therefore significantly affected by the manifestations of climate change, such as rising temperatures, which cause increased evaporation, deplete the soil of water, but also alteration of more intense wet periods and droughts, right? So, like cut and dry, if this happens everywhere where, the potato market is 12 billion euros, 3.1% of the total value of European agricultural output. Effectively, that might just, really experience some problems as we're moving forward. That seems a little significant, Anyway, keep going. This is just more of the just the potato stuff. Seasonal prices in Europe soar to the highest in at least 14 years. So again, it always comes back to the regular working person is going to be shouldering the worst of this stuff, even in the imperial cores. And then in the periphery, they're going to be shouldering it in a different and much more brutal and manner. And again, and it all just seems needless. Because our rulers would rather focus on war and maintaining their own position in society, right? Here we go. 2021. Almost 90% of potato growers indicate that changes in climatic conditions have affected their potato production in the last 10 years. So again, we go back to that very first video. What is the ecological left? Is it 90% of potato growers? Is it, children that want to live? Is it scientists and professionals? Who exactly is the ecological left? There's so many different, is it local communities who don't want to be poisoned by, you know, all the consequences stemming from the MVP? Is it these 15,000 people who died, right? This is something that occurred a bit ago. 2022, the European heat wave, right? You don't see really anyone talking about it anymore. You don't see it on the news. I didn't really see it on the news really at all, even when it was happening, but especially, with regard to climate discussions, it's been 2 years. We already had people dying, right? One death is too many, and we have 15,000. Yet 2 years have gone by, and we're still building pipelines. We're still saying that we're not going to change in 10 years. We're still saying, where was that thing? They plan to produce double the fossil fuels into 2030. You know, it's again, it's blatant class warfare when you break it down and find out what incentivizes this outcome, right? What led to this? Because it's not just happening in a vacuum. These people were murdered by climate inaction. It's not just an act of nature as natural disasters were in the past. It was humans making the choice to allow anthropogenic climate change and all the suffering and misery and death that is woven into that equation, right? Woven into what climate change actually is. So, yeah, that's my little 2 cents on the climate stuff. I just had to talk about it because I saw this video. All these things just came to mind, so I just wanted to discuss. Yeah, here's another great question. What exactly is the right way to do it, right? Anyway, I guess I should end on a call to action. Check out the solidarity economy. Check out efforts for solidarity communities. The Black Socialists in America have incredible resources on their website. Cooperation Jackson and Solidarity St. Louis. And I think in Vermont, they're also doing some efforts, like real world efforts for solidarity and community organizing. In my humble opinion, that's the most grounded avenue we have to holding our status quo, our rulers accountable, both our economic rulers and those in the political establishment as it stands right now, who are all beholden to the interests of those with consolidated capital themselves, or are also part of the ownership class, right? Like Joe Manchin. Great example. Anyway, thanks for watching. I appreciate y'all. And if, as always, I want to fundamentally do these type of videos as a opportunity to organize further. So, if we want to engage in the comments, do it, please. I'm begging you. Also, Food Not Bombs, if they're in your community, they're a great resource to, a great place to network with like-minded people and also, do good for your community. So that's really cool. Thanks again, and I'll go ahead and wrap this up. Take care and best wishes to all.